One of the things I wanted to talk about at the recording of this particular episode, there's a new movie that's come out called The New Mutants, and it is a superhero movie. It's from Marvel Comics and Fox Studios, and right now we're at a time where superhero movies or just superheroes, comic books, and sci-fi are at an all-time high. They're making money. They're making billions of dollars in box office. So it only makes sense that there would be more coming out and other characters within the Marvel universe that they would want to produce films about. Very quickly, an overview of the New Mutants from the comic book version, not the movie version, movie interpretation. They were at the time when they debuted sort of like the next generation of the X-Men characters. They were young. They were recruited by Professor X, in the old style of him kind of traveling around and finding these people and selecting them. And then they had their own adventures as they learned to deal with and develop their powers. So now here we are, 2020, and there's a film about them that just been released, and there's a lot of controversy around these characters. So what we decided to do was bring some people together to have a discussion about that, and also a discussion about Geekspanic Heritage Month celebration, which is in this first year that happens between September 15th and October 15th, and that's where we have Thomas Delphi, who's founder of Nerdtino and founder of this celebration, and Adriana Kaplan, who is the associate director of this celebration as well. So I would like to start with Miguel. Miguel, you actually saw the movie, and so can you talk a little bit about the movie and what the controversy is?
Oh man, New Mutants. The movie, it touches on the story on the bear, the demon bear story, which is I think the first few issues of the 1980s version of the New Mutants, which is the first New Mutant series.
And I guess we should say spoiler alert too for anybody who hasn't seen the movie before we start.
Too late.
Right. Some things just slipped out, but okay.
No, well, it's you kind of see that in the trailer. I don't want to tell too much of the movie. But I did see the movie. I didn't want to. I guess I don't want to give too much away. But I did enjoy the movie.
Okay, so why don't we start like this then? So there's one of the characters in the New Mutants, the group, the comic book, and the movie is a character named Sunspot. Sunspot is Afro-Brazilian, and in the comic books, he has a black father or an Afro-Brazilian father and a white mother, and he's drawn and depicted brown skin. And really, if you think about it, he's one of the only superhero characters that actually gets darker when he uses his powers, because he becomes completely black, like the spot in the sun. However, that particular character is not being portrayed that way in the movie, and a lot of people are upset about that. And can you talk a little bit about that? We'll start with you, and then we'll go through everybody here.
Yeah, I was upset with that because he's actually one of my favorite characters in the New Mutants. So seeing him being so light and not really having curly hair, it was a disappointment. The same thing with the doctor as well.
And the
Dr.
Celia Reyes.
Yeah.
So there's two mutants of Latinx culture in this.
Yeah.
Celia Reyes, who's Puerto Rican or Mexican? I can't remember. She's
Puerto
Rican from New York.
Puerto Rican
in the comic book.
New Yorican.
New Yorican. Right, right.
Yeah.
And she's brown and she has braids. At least I remember her being drawn.
Braids or dreads. I remember her having dreads
Right,
first.
right.
And
And then we have Sunspot, who's from Brazil, who's Afro-Brazilian, who was
yeah.
brown skinned with a thicker, wavier, curlier hair. Um, so what's the issue there? Why is that an issue?
It's an issue because most of the people that I know of from Brazil, like when you see movies and documentaries, and even when you travel to those that region of yeah, not the United States, but America, they're more darker people than lighter people.
Hmm.
You know, like not just now, but like back then as well, like the 80s and going back, you see more and more darker people.
Hmm.
So it was just a little disappointment
Hmm.
in my just watching it. I kind of like wanted to kind of stick to the comics, and I understand where business and money and politics come into play, but it was a disappointment.
Hmm. And Adriana and Thomas, how do you guys feel about the depiction of Sunspot and
Uh,
Celia Reyes?
so Celia Reyes, while upsetting, didn't necessarily bother me as much as it did for Sunspot, and I think for a lot of that had to do a lot with Sunspot's like power origin stories, because I'm not sure if it goes in if they go into it into the movie, but like at least in the comic books, he gets bullied for being darker skinned. Like he gets the crap beat out of him, and while he's getting the crap beat out of him, like in public, in a stadium, at a football game, that's when his powers like emerge. So it's like him being as dark skinned with the curly hair is really vital to him as a person, and to kind of take that away. Is insulting, and it just kind of takes away from like that power of him,
Hmm.
at least in my eyes.
Yeah. So looking at Sunspot, it's complicated within the industry and also complicated as complicated being a part of the Latin American community that wants to see more representation for Latin Americans in media, and more so than that, representation of our actors. Now, the actor in question actually is Brazilian at the very least. However, this was a role that had a specific origin within Afro-Brazilian culture, which is again and often stigmatized and larger persecuted, underrepresented community. But looking at color and heritage in the Latin American community is so freaking complicated because it never goes one way. You can have folks that are incredibly knowledgeable knowledgeable and immersed within their Latin heritage, but they're lighter skinned. You have folks that don't even acknowledge that they're Latin heritage, but they're dark brown. And you have just this weird mix of people that either experience racism or they don't, or they experience like internal pressure, and it's so complicated when you get into color and identity in the Latin American community. Now, obviously, looking at Sunspot, this is a big miss. Like, this was something that in the hands of a correct production team and a strategic production team could have been easily amended. But the thing I've always found when film productions fail in accurately casting, accurately or inaccurately or lazily casting a character that is of a particular ethnicity or heritage, it's a larger an indicator that the overall project is going to be bad. In that it's kind of lazy craftsmanship in one end, so of course the whole ship's going to be sloppy. And I think it speaks to a larger problem or a larger challenge for Latin Americans in that, we ask for representation and then we don't get it. Okay. So maybe the tune needs to be, we have to find ourselves less in the position of asking and more in the position of being able to manifest.
Mm.
So the other thing, Sean, do you want to say something?
I just I want to follow up to that statement. In a case like this, with something that obviously some people will find it so egregious, what do you feel that is the appropriate response to something like this? Is it a case where you boycott the movie? You know, like, do you say, well, at least the actor is Brazilian? Like, how do you feel like this should be handled?
Go. Yeah.
No.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, like, we hear about the whole cancel culture, but like a lot of people aren't really holding up to it. I always look at it like if you want a movie done your way, you got to do it yourself. But at the same time, like if it's a big corporation like Marvel and they want people's and you know, input and things like that, especially like where they get their ideas from fans, I think it's important for them to make that initiative.
Is it, and I just have a question as, I mean, we're all creatives here. Is there ever a time where it is appropriate to change the ethnicity of a character? You know, and within comic books, this isn't the first time that they've done this. It's happened before. You know, there are some heroes that are on TV that in the books are white characters, but on TV they're black, or, you know, or vice versa. And you know, for example, for me, one of the things I was thinking about was, could it work? Could this be could you create a character that the ethnicity changes and it's okay, or it makes sense? And so one of the ones that I thought about was within the Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan. If you see the newest HBO series, now the original Dr. Manhattan is Jewish. And then in the new series, spoiler alert, people, he is a person of color. Now, you know, part of that storyline has to do with the energy and the possession and the form and all that other stuff that I guess would explain it. But I just wondered, you know, is there ever a case or incidents where it can work? Or is it just something that just is ridiculous? I mean, even if you look in some of the other comic books, when they have in the past portrayed Egyptians, the skin has been colored gray, you know, and things like that. You know, what do you guys think about that?
So, in the case, specifically talking to the case of Dr. Manhattan, he's a weird, like, he's a weird case to pick, because ultimately it's not like yes, he's Jewish, but when he becomes Dr. Manhattan, this all-knowing, powerful being, he kind of like leaves race and identity and all of that behind. And I think in the case of the show, specifically when they made him black, like a little bit of me was hurt because I'm also Jewish, but at the same time, he's not really held to like a race standard, kind of. It's not like a huge part of his backstory. It's not something that really defines him as a character, as a person. And I think if in those situations where if the character, like at their core, like their race, their culture, their religion, like isn't inherent to who they are in some way, like it's not a huge deal, because I know there's like, just like I have people in my life who are Jewish, but it's like they only do the things because their parents do it, and ultimately it's not something they really identify with. But like, but if it's like something that's majorly a part of who they are as a character, like they've always been portrayed as that being like a large part of their identity, to kind of like take that away from them it just isn't okay.
I'm sorry, not to cut no one off, but I also think it's important that people know that race and ethnicity is not the same thing. So you have black Jewish people, and you get what I'm saying? You have white Jewish people and other people that don't consider themselves as black, but you know, like Jewish is a religion.
Okay.
Okay. So, oh, Tom, you want to say add to it?
Well, I was going to say that when you do have a character of a particular ethnicity, or even one that, or even one that is projected as like a as a white character, or something like that, you'll have to think about the agency of the character, and you have to think about the agency of the character in relation to the community that they are a part of, and also in relation to the narrative. Like, and this applies to any number of diverse communities, and effective representation. And you also have to think about, well, is casting this character differently going to create new opportunities for new performers and new creatives to hit the screens that otherwise wouldn't have it? Looking at Sunspot, like, you have to think about like what work went into like recruiting actors that were from Brazil. Was this just an agent call out, or was there an attempt to actively recruit in Brazil? One of my favorite films is City of God, which is what I consider one of the best Latin American crime films ever made.
Yeah.
And it's about the story of the favelas, the poverty towns in Brazil. That's like this massive complex of shanty towns and communities. I was when we were talking about this Sunspot controversy, I was thinking almost the entire cast of that film is Afro-Brazilian.
Yeah.
And how much of a missed opportunity is there to make the film that elevates a new rising star, or accesses a whole new industry, or a whole new group of creatives, and when you're writing characters and you do think about changing ethnicity, you also have to think about, like, well, what's kind of the missing history here, or what's kind of the larger angle. Actually, it's funny, I was just workshopping with a buddy recently about the character of Superman, and how there is a significant Jewish influence in the character's origin and design, because the creators themselves were Jewish. And when you looked at the character, you could easily write Superman as a Jewish character. In the late 19th century, there were massive farming communities that were established by Jewish settlers moving out west. The given name for Pa Kent in one of the 1940 Superman books, not an actual comic, but actually a novel, was Eben Kent, which is a Hebrew name. And there's much more that you can play with there, as far as exploring depth of the character, the natures of immigrants and refugees arriving in America, and how they're treated and perceived. And is doing something like, you have to think about if doing something like that is going to add to a greater depth.
And I think it's a shame, it's a travesty that we're in 2020 and this is still the same story that's going on. As an African American, it's something that we experience in Black sci-fi as well. With the characters, and you fight for this as well, but really the solution to all of this is to control your own narrative. And
right.
That's one of the things that I really like about the Nerdtino Expo, and what you're trying to do with Geekspanic Heritage Month celebration, is to really say, this culture, Latinx culture, is global. It's all over the world, and even though we don't hear about it as much, or it's not covered like it is, which is the problem, there's this whole array that we're missing, that to me, I want to hear. I am a person that I love sci-fi, period. I want to hear everybody's opinion, because you may have an idea that I never thought of, that may challenge me, that's going to put me into another situation, where I won't be comfortable, but I'll understand your perspective, or maybe you see something that I don't see from a perspective. I see something from a different perspective. So to me, the question I always like to pose to the public is, do you like creativity and imagination in sci-fi, or do you like creativity and imagination in sci-fi when it's produced by the mainstream companies only? And so, I really appreciate Nerdtino Expo. If you could talk a little bit about the Nerdtino Expo first, and then how you came about with the Geekspanic Heritage Month, and what we're going to experience from that, and what really does it mean when we say Latinx sci-fi or this culture? What are we looking at? What's different about that that we're missing?
So I do want to address one of the points that you brought up. You know, if we want to see the kind of representation of our communities that we want in the world and a broader narrative, while yes, you do need to foster change within mainstream media, mainstream industries, and encourage that development and become a part of it, but you also have to assume a measure of control and influence of your own, in that you're not always in a position that you are asking for a world that never considered you before to consider you now. In the last few years, we've seen the emergence of, we've seen the emergence of Latinx creatives and creative organizations across the United States and in Latin America, whether it's film, gaming, comic books, what have you, right? You look at just film. You've got the Reo Brothers studio that just opened up in Atlanta, which is the first all Latin American owned film studio in the United States. You've got the Latinx Film Network out there that's making moves and helping support each other and helping support each other's communities. You have, besides Nerdtino Expo, you've got something like 6 or 7 other Latin American comic book conventions and festivals across the United States, and our cousins, an indigenous one, the Indigenous Comic-Con. So looking at just, Nerdtino Expo, this is why we exist. Nerdtino is all about promoting the history and presence of Latinx, Hispanic, Afro-Latin, Afro-Caribbean, and indigenous creators and fans in pop culture. Comic books, science fiction, fantasy, horror, cosplay, gaming, wrestling, it goes on. And it's not just about promoting modern diversity and modern attempts to reach out to our communities, but also to explore the unknown history. Fun fact: who was responsible for bringing a significant amount of anime to the United States' attention in the late 1960s and early 70s? Peter Hernandez, the Cuban voice actor for Speed Racer.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that.
I did not know that until the other night.
Wow. Okay.
But no, he wasn't just responsible for translating anime produced in Japan that was being brought over to the United States as part of Saturday morning cartoons, but he was responsible for so many other shows and basically the beginning of anime coming to the United States.
Wow.
And this is a guy that was, unfortunately, he passed away in 2010. So it's also about exploring that history. Now, in that spirit, between September 15th and October 15th, we are launching Geekspanic Heritage Month, which is going to coincide with Hispanic Heritage Month, but it is going to be a celebration of Latinx geek culture across the United States and Latin America. We are going to be releasing a series of interviews with Latin American creatives, voice actors, writers, artists, stuff like that. You got to follow us to find out who. We'll be posting every Tuesday and Thursday between September 15th and October 15th across social media and setting up on Spotify and all that good stuff. And again, you can follow us at Nerdtino on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Awesome. Okay, so we're running out of time, but I mean, I really want to thank all of you for participating in this small discussion. You know, we're going to run the information on the screen so everybody can know. You know, we really look forward to this year of the Geekspanic Heritage Month. Once again, it's running from September 15th to October 15th, and this is the first year, so it's going to happen again, right, Adriana? It's going to be something that continues on that you guys are looking for as a legacy, correct?
It better be.
And Nerdtino's not going anywhere either, so that'll
no. We'll
be
have
going
both.
on at the
I
same
hear
as
that.
both. Awesome. Okay, so I want to thank you guys, and just you know, if there's anything you guys want to say in closing before we end, Miguel or Adriana or Tom, go ahead, take your time.
Well, one last thing. For Geekspanic Heritage Month, we're going to be posting our content, but if you are a Latinx creator as well, hop on in, hashtag Geekspanic Heritage Month 2020, Geekspanic.
There you go. All right. Thank you so much for being on Black Sci-Fi TV. Sean or Miguel or Adriana, you guys want to say anything before we end?
Well, ladies first.
Oh, well, I just want to say thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. Always down to talk about Nerdtino and getting more eyes on what we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, you can reach me at Miguel Blanco, Mr. Miguel Blanco. And those who are really into indie comics, I'm actually one of the artists that's an upcoming comic book is Nana Where Spider. Kickstarter started today, so please check that out.
I will
so
second
boy Greg.
Nana is so good.
Yeah, definitely.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, that's definitely a book to check out. And Sean, you want to close out?
I'm just looking forward to everything in Geekspanic Month, and go support Isnani. And yeah, you know, thanks for having me here.
All right,
Love
thanks
you,
a lot.
Sean.
All right, thanks a lot, everybody.
All right.
Take care.